Gvirotai v'Rabotai, I want to introduce my friend and my colleague, Mauricio Balter, who is the rabbi of Kilat Eshel Avraham in Beersheba and the president of the Israel region of the Rabbinical Assembly, who will be chairing this session. Mauricio's introduction of Yair Lapid will be in Hebrew. Yair's comments will be in English.
חברים וחברות, אתמול בערב, כשהיינו בדרכנו לשדה תעופה לקבל את פניו של יאיר לפיד, קיבל יזהר הס, מנכ"ל התנועה המסורתית, הודעה בטקסט מהדוברת של התנועה בארץ. השעה הייתה 2 בלילה בישראל. אתה לא תאמין, היא כותבת לו. יש בארץ דרמה פוליטית גדולה, הכל השתנה. מופז נכנס לממשלה, אין בחירות. היינו 3, יזהר, מנכ"ל התנועה, ידידי דיוויד ליסי, מנכ"ל הקרן כאן בארצות הברית, ואני. הסתכלנו אחד על השני. פתחנו מיד את האינטרנט והמכשירים הניידים, ועקבנו כמעט בשידור חי אחרי מה שקרה אתמול בישראל. אכן, דרמה גדולה. יש ממשלה חדשה בישראל, והבחירות שכבר כמעט היינו בטוחים שיהיו בראשית חודש ספטמבר הקרוב, נדחו למועדן הקבוע בעוד יותר משנה. טוב, אז אנחנו בשדה תעופה, ממתינים ליאיר לפיד, כשבעצם כאשר כל הדרמה הגדולה הזו מתרחשת בארץ, הוא נמצא במטוס, בדרך לארץ. הוא עלה על המטוס באמצע קמפיין, כשהוא יודע שבעוד 4 חודשים יש בחירות. כשכל הסקרים מנבאים לו מעל 11 מנדטים, והוא נוחת כאן, באטלנטה, כדי ללמוד שכל המציאות הפוליטית בישראל השתנתה. ואחרי שהבנו את זה, הבנו עוד משהו. אנחנו נהיה ראשונים לפגוש אותו אחרי קבלת הידיעה, והנאום שלו היום כאן בכנסת הרבנים יהיה אירוע ציבורי הראשון בו משתתף יאיר לפיד אחרי הדרמה הפוליטית הגדולה שהתרחשה אתמול בלילה בישראל. חברים וחברות, יאיר לפיד נולד וגדל בתל אביב, בנם של עיתונאי בפוליטיקאי יוסף תומי לפיד והסופרת המחזאית שולמית לפיד. הוא נשוי לצלמת ולעיתונאית ליהי לפיד, והוא אבא של 2 ילדים. יאיר לפיד הוא לא רק סופר שכתב 11 ספרים, הוא גם עיתונאי הנקרא ביותר בישראל. התור הקבוע שלו המופיע במוסף סוף השבוע של ידיעות אחרונות הוא כמעט מוסד. ישראלים רבים, ואני בתוכם, קוראים דבר ראשון בעיתון את התור של יאיר לפיד. הוא כותב שם על החברה הישראלית, על ישראליות כתופעה תרבותית, על הקשר בין יהדות לישראליות, ואיננו לא פעם מצאתי את עצמי נוטל רעיון או 2 מהתור של יאיר לפיד, ומשלב אותו בדבר תורה שנתתי באותו שבוע בקהילה. כי אפשר לטעות כשקוראים את יאיר לפיד. הוא ישראלי מאוד, הוא יהודי מאוד, הוא פלורליסט אמיתי. עד לפני חודשים אחדים התפטר יאיר לפיד מהמשרה אולי הכי בכירה וודאי הכי נחשקת בתקשורת הישראלית. הוא היה מגיש של אולפן שישי, תוכנית הטלוויזיה המובילה של ערוץ 2 בערב שבת. הוא התפטר כדי להקים מפלגה, לעמוד בראשה ולרוץ לכנסת. ובאמצע קמפיין, כאשר הוא חורש את הארץ לאורכה ולרוחבה, הוא מקיים מדי יום מפגשים עם מאות אנשים, הוא נהנה להזמנה שלנו. לקח פסק זמן של יומיים, והגיע לכאן רק על מנת לפגוש אותנו. חברי כנסת הרבנים, המנהיגות של העולם המסורתי הקונסרבטיבי מרחבי העולם. הוא הגיע לכאן אתמול בלילה, ממריא חזרה לישראל מיד אחרי ההרצאה שלנו, ממש מיד אחרי ההרצאה שלנו. חברים וחברות, אני שמח וגם גאה להזמין לבמה את יאיר לפיד.
Okay. Hello and good afternoon. First of all, Mauricio, this was great. I want to first of all thank Rabbi Julie Schoenfeld for all this incredible work she's doing, and to Rabbi Gilad Dror for tolerating the fact that the unbearable fact that the state of Israel does not recognize her as a rabbi while her son is an intelligence officer in the army. I want to thank Rabbi Jerry Shkolnik, the incoming president of the Rabbinical Assembly. It's good to know that you have male rabbis as well. I want to thank Mauricio again, who's the president of the Rabbinical Assembly in Israel, and to my friend Mr. Isa Haas, who's the executive director of the Masorti movement in Israel. Yeah. For those of you who do not know Isa, then you should know he lost so much weight this last year that it's like there's another Isa Haas who didn't make it to the convention. As Mauricio was saying, I came here in what is, for me, a terrible timing. The election in Israel that was planned for September the 4th were just cancelled. Shaul Mofaz and Kadima has joined the Netanyahu government as junior partners. And right now, what it seems to happen is that we are going to a campaign in order to unite all sane forces within the country. Not everything that happened in the last 24 hours is wrong, because Kadima has come back to be what it actually always has been, which is part of the Likud. They came back home, and I'm going to use this opportunity to congratulate them for this reunification. It also says that the political map has changed, and we are now the only, or the sole, central party. We have Labour, Avodah, and Meretz on the left. We have the Likud that includes now Kadima on the right, and we became the sole representatives of the majority of the people of Israel that belongs to the same middle class. And I intend and determined not to disappoint them, because they were let down by too many people in too many occasions, and always for the wrong reasons, and somebody has to keep their interests going. And I really intend to be that somebody. What it also says is that since last night, I am swamped with phone calls from advisors and strategists and campaign managers who are all saying the same thing. Are you nuts? What are you doing in Atlanta? And I told them, I understand your panic, but I need to be here. I need to be here because I believe in prioritizing. I believe in the distinction between what is less important and what is really important. And this is really important. This is really important because I believe the Jewish identity is in danger. And you are the gatekeepers. You are part of the last line of defense of people who still believe that Judaism shouldn't be the jailhouse of ideas, but the liberator of ideas. Judaism should not be the disintegrator of people, but what get people together. And Judaism shouldn't be subordinated to small politics because it answers a higher rule. And I know that you feel very often that the state of Israel doesn't even seem to understand or appreciate the fact that you have saved the Jewish people from assimilation and from submersion. So if I have a chance to come here and thank you for keeping our mutual identity alive, then I'm really happy to do so. There is a story. It's my family story. It's my story. It's my founding story. And although it happened more than 20 years before I was born, in February 1945. No, it's less than 24 years before. In February 1945. In February 1945, my father was a 13-year-old child, and he was living with my grandma in a small basement in the Budapest ghetto. And at that stage, they were living mostly off the meat of horses, dead horses they found on the street. And the Russians were already approaching Budapest, so the Germans, along with the Hungarian fascists, start taking out the Jews in death convoys. And most of them were led into the Danube river, in which they were ordered to dig holes into the ice, and then they were shot into the freezing water. And one very early Monday morning, the Germans had surrounded my father's block, and they start taking him in one of those death convoys that had approximately 600 people. And people were looking at them from high windows, knowing also well that they were sentenced to death. And they were just walking, but at a certain point, a Russian plane lowered over this convoy. And for a minute there was a tremble, and people were yelling and shouting, and the Germans were shooting the Schmeisser machine guns into the sky. And my father hid behind a small public lavatory painted in green. And his mother, that stood behind him, pushed him inside this little lavatory and said, "You pee. You have to pee now." And it's hard. It's hard to pee when you're 13 and you're scared and you're cold and people are shooting and they all want to kill you. But he did. He peed. And she closed the door behind them. And the convoy left without them. And 15 minutes later, from the 600 people in this convoy, 598 were dead under the ice in the Danube River. And my father and my grandmother were standing alone in the street, and they were free. They could go anywhere. Here in the United States, while flying in here, you see hundreds and thousands of miles that no man ever walks in. And once I flew from Sydney to Perth in Australia, and for 5.5 hours, I saw just land that no man ever set foot in. And Paris was already liberated, and of course London was free, but my father, a 13-year-old child, had no place to go to. He had no place to go to. So they went back to the ghetto. They went back to the ghetto, to the same basement, hoping only that the Russians will arrive before the next death convoy will take place. Many years later, in 1986, I went with my father to Budapest. And we were just, strolling together in the street, looking at it, and it was the first time in 40 years that he's been to Budapest. Most of the time he ate. And we were just walking down the street, and suddenly he stood up and he started crying. My father was a big, fat man, and it was weird to watch him crying. He becomes all reddish, and he's crying, and he says, Yair, look. And I'm looking, and there's nothing there. There's nothing to look at. There's only one empty street with a very small public lavatory painted in green that is still there. And when he relaxed a bit, he said to me, this is it. This is the place I realized I always have to have a place to go to. I cannot live without having a place to go to. And we were standing there, two grown men stroking the green wall of this little public lavatory. And the Hungarians on the street skirted us carefully because they thought we were nuts. But we were not nuts. We were a statistical error. He was supposed to be dead, and I was supposed not to be born, and yet we were there against all odds. it took me many years to realize that I'm like my father. When I grew up, I thought, like every other kid in the Western world, that I'm more like you, like the Americans. I mean, his river was the Danube. My river was the Bruce Springsteen album that carries this name. And his basic trauma was the Holocaust, and my basic trauma was wars in which Jews are shooting back and eventually win. And he lost his father, and I had him, and he irritated me most of the time. And the synagogue he didn't go to was neological, which is the Hungarian version of the conservative movement. And the synagogue I'm not going to is an Israeli synagogue, and we didn't build it yet. And he lost his God in the ghetto, and who could blame him? And I found mine in the Lebanon War, not far away from Beirut. And his first language was Hungarian, and I dedicated my whole life, my entire life, to Hebrew. But as the year goes by, I realize more and more that there's something that connects us, that is stronger than all ornaments. And this is this eerie, unexplainable thing called the Jewish faith. This is our big secret. This is the thing that makes me stand here and you sit here. Because the split between us, the division between us, is just an historical accident. If we are to move the biographies of our fathers and grandfathers half inch to the right or to the left, I could be you and you could be me. I could be you and you could be me because somewhere down the line of the family history of each and every person who sits in this room, there is a man standing on a pier in a harbor trying to figure out which direction is he going. We are part of something. People all over the world spend a lifetime trying to be part of something. They join cults. They become politically active. They hook up with street gangs. They wear blue bandanas and they're killing other people just because they wear red bandanas. They go to India and they worship gurus. They're going to a church, they're going to a country club, they're going to a football game. They're going for 30 years to the same bar only because the bartender remembers their name. We have all that as a birthright. And we should cherish this right because it sounds like a contradiction in terms, but being committed is a privilege. I could be you and you could be me, so if somebody is raising his hand on a Jew in Atlanta, it is happening to me. If gravestones are desecrated in a cemetery in the Ukraine, it is happening to me. If Muslims are stabbing a rabbi in the streets of Paris, it is happening to me. And I came here because I believe that if something is happening in Israel, it is happening to you. I'm an Israeli politician. And when Israeli politicians are coming to the United States, they're always making the mistake in trying to explain their American friends the troubles and complexities of Israeli politics and how hard it is to do the right thing no matter how much they want to. So I'm going to make it simple. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure the rotten bill will disappear. I do not know whether it's good politics or bad politics. I do not know what my constituency thinks about it. We never polled it, and I'm not going to spend a nickel in polling it. Because no matter what the results would be, my mind will not change. This is just wrong. And therefore, it has to disappear. I'm going to do whatever is necessary and whatever is in my power to make it feasible to women, conservative or reform, to pray in the Wailing Wall wearing their praying shawls. Why? Because Israel cannot be the only country in the Western world that has no freedom of religion to Jews. This is just wrong. And therefore it has to disappear. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure there are going to be civil marriages in Israel. The total dominance of the Israeli Rabbanut over marriage and divorce in Israel is an insult to every free man. This is just wrong, and therefore it has to disappear. And I'm going to do everything in my power to ensure the equality of all movements of Judaism in Israel, Orthodox, conservative, or Reform. In conversion, in budgets, in the eyes of the law. No one can claim ownership over the Jewish God. Small, petty politics cannot determine something that is eternal as the Jewish identity. This is just wrong. And therefore, it has to disappear. And I'm not even doing this for you. I'm doing this because I could be you and you could be me. For many years, the tragedy of the conservative movement in the United States and Israel was the fact that the majority of Israelis are actually conservative, they just don't know it. Because the majority of Israelis wanted a pluralistic, sane, welcoming Judaism. They were just not aware to the fact that there is such a thing. In the past few years, it is changing. The current leadership of the movement in Israel has changed the situation in many ways. The number of congregations went up in 50% within the last 5 years. The youth movement is flourishing, you know that better than I do. And the new generation of politicians is not afraid to say, I could be you and you could be me. I could be you and you could be me because we sprout from the same root. Many years ago, on 19th century England, an Irish MP yelled at Parliament, at Benjamin Disraeli, Queen Victoria's Jewish Prime Minister, "You bloody Jew." And Disraeli's response was, when the forefathers of the honorable member from Dublin were running naked and cruel in the forests, my forefathers were priests in King Solomon's palace. Thank you very much for having me tonight.
Xaverim, this is the moment for question. Please, if someone want to ask, there's a microphone at the floor. Please, present yourself.
Mauricio, if you don't mind, I'm going to handle this because I didn't host for 6 months now.
My name is Rabbi Philip Weintraub from Newburgh, New York. Now with the elections not happening, what are you going to do next?
Hard work. First, as I was saying earlier, I think there's a big opportunity there. I think there's a vacancy, huge vacancy now in the central of Israeli politics, and we have what other parties do not have, which is 8,500 volunteers that are willing to work. And what I was doing since last night is putting them to work. It's not going to be a year and a half. It's going to be a year now until next election. This time is good for us because everybody, right now in Israel there's a coalition of 94 seats. The last person who had such a coalition was Nicolae Ceausescu in Romania. So there's not a lot they can say against the government if they are in the government, and we're going to be the clear voice of the people on that. So I'm really happy with what happened because it creates a big vacancy for us.
This microphone? This is a microphone if you want to ask. Okay.
It says the subject of your speech today will be Israel where? Where are we going? השאלה הנצחית לאן? מבחירה זאת, in practical terms, from what you see, since the government is not changing, in terms of the things that you were talking about that we all love and agree with, can we expect to see any change?
Well, the answer is in the next election. I think people of Israel are sick and tired of all politics. We saw this in the demonstration in the summer. Unlike what I'm reading and seeing on television here in the United States, the movement that we had over in the last summer was nothing but esoteric. And it echoed a real sentiment. And actually, I think more people approved with it than what you saw on the streets, and we saw quite a lot of people, because for each and every person who was demonstrating, there were two parents who said, you go, I'll babysit. So I think the sentiment is right. I think Israelis are now willing to vote not on fear, not on hatred, not on who's going to, I don't know, do his best, not going into negotiation with the Palestinians. Now they're willing to vote for their own life. Now they're willing to vote on the real issues, on housing and education and transportation and the fact that everything has become so expensive. So yes, I think what we're going to do is we're going to be very practical in voting and make sure there are political forces that are there to change the situation. It's not going to be changed outside the political world. It always changes within the political arena.
Hi, Yair, Rabbi Andy Sugarman from Miami, Florida. We met in the elevator.
Yeah.
Well, Baruch haba.
Thank you. Thank you.
What can you tell us about the demographics of your 8,500 volunteers and the relation?
Well, it's 8,500, but thank you. Yeah,
I said 8,500.
Oh, 8,500, okay. Yeah, sure, so my
No,
mistake.
it's a
My
different
bad.
math. Yeah. What can you tell us about the demographics of your volunteer base and the relationship to their relationship to the protests last summer that you were just speaking about?
Well, they are young, educated, been to the army, upset, and practical. They have a practical vision. One of the hardest things in politics is to create a hope that is also practical. And they came because they feel this is a practical hope. This is a way to look at life and say, I can change my own life, and I'm going to be his tool and he's going to be mine, which I like, by the way. Because this, I think politics is the operating system of a country. And they look at us and say, okay, you're going to be the operating system of the operating system. So that their demographics, they are the kind of Israelis in terms of age and education you want to be friends with. So I'm quite, it's very wide. I mean, it's from all they're not really poor, they're not really rich, it's very wide. Yes.
This is not working.
One of the major
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I be heard?
Yes, please.
One of the major things that's going to be happening in Israel this summer, now that there is no election, is the fact that the Tal law is no longer going to be in effect. Therefore, new things have to be done in regard to the drafting of the Haredi population into the army. And our Rabbinical Assembly has in the past passed many resolutions calling for equal service for everybody in Tzahal, and that there should not be exemptions for the Haredim. I know that you've made some statements in the past, and you had some ideas, if I'm not mistaken, which seem to say, put it off for another 5 years, or don't keep the exemptions going for a longer period of time. So I would like to hear what your attitude is toward this question of equal service for everyone in Israel now that the Talmud is going.
Well, first of all, both Netanyahu and Mofaz said that one of the reasons they're creating this new government is to have something to substitute the Tal law, and if they'll do something which has to do with equal service to everybody, I will be the first one to congratulate them on this. It's yet to be seen. My idea was, and I presented last week in Tel Aviv, I'm saying, of course everyone should serve. Not everybody is going to serve in the army, not in terms of being religious, just the army doesn't need everybody. What we need is to have people who are going either to the army or to do civil service of some sort. On that, we have proposed an in-between stage of 5 years. The problem with the Tal law says the following. What we're going to do is every religious youngster who is not going to the army is going to be locked up in those yeshivot, in the Orthodox yeshivot, and we're not going to make it possible for him to go out to work. What we want to do is, first of all, empty the Orthodox yeshivot from all the people who are just hiding there in order not to serve. So thank you. So we said on the 5 years we are anyway need in order to organize a whole civil service and changing the army, because we want to change the army, what we can do is we're going to tell these people, listen, the country is suffered from you twice. Once because you're not serving in the army, and the second time is because you're not working and you're not supporting yourself. And we are supposed to support you, and we're sick of tired of it, and we don't have the money to do so anymore. So we're going to let those people go outside the yeshivot, and then 5 years from now, 5 years is a very short time in the life of a nation, and especially in the life of a nation as ancient as the Jews. So in 5 years' time, everybody is going to be drafted either to the army or to civil service. So this is our proposal. It's more complicated than that, but this is on a nutshell.
Gila Dror, Hampton, Virginia, for the past 11 years. I have a very simple question. First of all, thank you for that vision of shared values. Thank you so much for explicating it and putting it out right there for all of us to hear. We're obviously with you. My question is, what can we do to help?
Well, as I keep telling my children, be yourself. Meaning, we have to have a clear pluralistic voice in the air all the time. You need to say out loud, we want to join forces with people who are democratic, with people who believe in things like the supremacy of the Supreme Court, like the ability of a country to prevent the Knesset from making undemocratic laws, thank you, and so on and so forth. So you have to say, we are on the side of every pluralistic voice that is coming into the public arena. This will be a great help, because people in America I know you feel neglected every now and then, but the people of Israel do listen. The right people of Israel do listen. This is why it was important to me, in the middle of what I thought was a campaign, to jump on a plane and come here. Because I wanted you to listen to me, and more than that, I wanted to listen to you. So just be there. Just be there for us. We need you.
Thank you.
I'm Jack Moline from Alexandria, Virginia. Again, thank you for being here, especially in these circumstances. My congregation, we had the wonderful opportunity to hear from Stav Shafir and Shir Nosatsky 2 weeks out of 3, who were two of the leaders of the social justice movement. And both of them had very fine things to say about your candidacy. Both of them also were very critical of the free market economy in Israel and what it's done to the ability of people to rely on a safety net that has long been a part of the Israeli social structure. I'm wondering what your vision of the economic system and the economic health of Israel would be.
Listen, there are more of the socialist side of the Israeli society, which is outside any, I mean, aside from the United States, it's legit everywhere else, okay? I am not a socialist. I believe in the free market. I believe that I want to live in a society that cherishes success. I want to live in a society that is competitive, that is creative, that is not ruled by unions, even though I believe everyone has the right to unionize. And so on that, I also, I mean, apparently the one thing I share with this young women is their personal fondness. But aside from that, I totally disagree with them in their economical views. But I find it heartwarming that people in that age and that stage of life still believe in those beautiful things. This is the old say, you know, George Bernard Shaw saying, you know, if you're not a communist by the age of 17, you don't have a heart. And if you're still a communist by the age of 30, you don't have a brain. It's not me, it's just a say. So anyway, on that, I will fondly disagree with those two fine young women.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yitzhak Navon was Ben Gurion's personal secretary, and he was present at a conversation between the Chazon Ish and Ben Gurion a few years after Hakamat HaMedina. And the Chazon Ish and Ben Gurion were talking about Dinei Ishut, and who would be in charge. And the Chazon Ish quoted a story from the Talmud that if you have a narrow bridge and you have two wagons, one coming from one side and one from the other, and they can't cross at the same time, which one goes first? And the obvious answer was the one with Yoter Schora. And the empty wagon was the wagon of the Zionists, and the full wagon was the wagon of the Dati'im. Nothing has changed since that time period. What makes you think that you can change what those of us who are conservative rabbis, pluralists, and I as a Jew living in Jerusalem, in Israel, would love to change? What makes you think that your party and your voice is going to change anything?
Well, let me start with saying the Chazon Ish was wrong. He was wrong. The wagon of Zionism is not an empty wagon. The wagon of Zionism is filled with everything that is good within the Jewish spirit. We are bringing into the table pluralism, democracy, smartness, tendency to excellence, and the Jewish tradition. And I mean, what room is better than this room to understand the fact that there are many ways of reading the same book? So, and we believe that our way of reading this book is the right way, and we believe in the joy of reading this book in many different ways. So the Chazon Ish was wrong, and by the way, Ben Gurion, one of his few mistakes, was telling the Chazon Ish, okay, I'm going to let you have your own way, which is outside the mainstream of the whole country. If he would say to the Chazon Ish, this is very nice and dandy, but your children needs to go into a schooling system that is shared by all Jews of Israel, the situation we'll be facing now would be totally different. So this is the answer I have to the Chazon Ish.
David, excuse me, the people. Thank you, David.
Thank you again for being here, Steve Kane, Briarcliff, Manor, New York. First of all, in America, a campaign of a year and a half is actually about right. So we hope, we wish you the best in gaining more momentum with that. So when you become prime minister, which of the current political parties would you never include in your coalition?
Wow. Such a short question, so many booby traps. First of all, I know that in the United States, a year and a half of campaigning sounds about right. In Israel, it means I'm going to have lunch with each and one of the voters. But aside from that, listen, it's a known social game played in every country. What is your red lines? But I'm not playing this game. We don't know what will be the result of the election. We don't know what parties are going to be there. We don't know what's going to happen in a year and a half from now, or 3 years from now, or 4 years from now. And everything I'm going to say now will be unhelpful to me. And I tend to try and help myself as much as I can.
Two last questions, please.
Arthur Weiner from Paramus, New Jersey. Thank you for being with us. Would you care to comment on your party and movement's policies regarding defense, security, and things of that nature?
Yeah, well, I'm going to be short about this because this could happen. This could go on for hours. Basically, I think the tragedy of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is the fact that every sane person in Israel knows exactly how it's going to end. I mean, everyone has different terms for it. I mean, Sharon called it painful, give-ups, and Olmert already painted the maps, and Netanyahu has called it 3 times by now, in Bar Ilan, in the Congress, and in the UN, two-state solution. So everybody has a different name for the same result. And the only thing we do not know, 2 things we do not know, is how much time is going to pass until it will happen, and how much blood is going to shed until it happens. So every responsible government should make sure the smallest amount of time will pass and the smallest amount of blood will shed. And this is what we're going to say. I mean, I'm no leftist. I don't believe that the Israelis are the one to be blamed that we don't have a peace yet. I think the Palestinians made terrible mistakes during this process. But we have to be near this table. We are not anywhere near the table right now. And we have to go back to the table and discuss it and talk to them and make sure, and when the minute will come and both sides will mature into the process, we'll be there. You cannot mature into the process if you're not there. So this is my answer to this.
Last question, please.
David Saltzman, Wanacue, New Jersey. Seeing pictures of Ulpana on television recently brings back memories of Yamit and other Jewish communities. How do you envision the Supreme Court's decision being implemented or not implemented, and what would your approach be to existing places where Jews are living?
There is no, in my book, sir, there is no possibility that is called Supreme Court decisions will not be implemented. There is no such thing. I mean, the Israeli Supreme Court, and I'm quoting Ellen Dershowitz now, is a lighthouse for democracies all over the world. And saying that his decision won't be implemented is, in a way, might become the end of Israeli democracy, and I want to live in a democracy. There's no other choice. So this is my answer. Even though it's painful, I mean, these are good Israelis, it's their homes, I understand their pain, but there's no way that Supreme Court decision will not be implemented. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me. I have a plane to catch, and Mauricio.
בשם כנסת הרבנים העולמי, אני רוצה להודות לך, יאיר. הנה אני נותן לך, אנחנו מוסרים לך מתנה, המחזור החדש של התנועה, שמשקף את התיאולוגיה שלנו, ואני מקווה ששם אתה תמצא השראה לתור הבא שלך, ואנחנו מודים לך, תודה רבה, וחזרה בשלום לארץ.